A big help when you're trying to mix vocals is to get the vocal to be as level as possible before it hits a compressor. Now, most times, if people are doing audio for any song, you want the vocal in your face. You kind of want it to be heard in all aspects, which means make it into a cannonball that can shoot through the center of a dense mix. Typically what you're looking for, right? So in order to make this happen, if a compressor works barely any at all on quiet parts of something of a passage and then has to kill itself to really chomp down on the loud stuff, you're never going to be able to set the threshold of that compressor correctly. But like I said, many ways to do this. You could automate the threshold, or if you were thinking 1176, there's an input that is essentially the threshold. You could automate that because that controls how loud or how low the amount of signal gets into the compressor, which will determine how hard it works. So when I think about this, I think you could automate a threshold, but it's usually harder to do that. It's not my favorite thing to do. What I find to be the easiest way to do it is to just clip gain. You basically separate into regions and you adjust each clip with the little volume thing that's on each clip. So it's so easy to do. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Go over here. So you see how this is all chopped up? This was all one performance that was recorded with zero compression. It's a voiceover passage from the movie Pulp Fiction, Ezekiel 25:17. So it's basically, if you look at what this looked like before I chopped it, you see how we have tons of low-level stuff here. Okay, low level, and then we got this loud level section. So the way I usually would work this is I just break it up with Apple E, and then I make it louder or lower right here on the clip itself. It couldn't be easier to automate in this way. See what I'm saying? We have to make this clip look correctly in order to do this properly. So I come over to the top here. You see this section? Let's get this out of the way. Right up here, you've got these up and down arrows on this section. If you make this smaller, you see how it shrinks everything? See how everything's now barely visible? And then if you click the up arrow part of it, see how everything you can make it as big as you want? So there's uses for making it giant, and there's uses for making it small. And in this case, we want it to be what I consider to be the easiest way to visualize this, which is a little bit of space on the top and bottom of each waveform. So that means this would be one click too much, and this is right. For me to look at this, I know when I look at this, a little bit of space top and bottom, I can basically go through and make everything look as close to that as I can. Now, it's not about being extremely meticulous with every word. I often find one word at a time gets a little ridiculous, and depending on how long the passage is, it could be a real pain. So the way I would look at this is look at phrases, look at groups of words that seem visibly, noticeably lower, and play it when you're done. Every time you do this, you got to hit play and then look at what the meter's doing. It should stay relatively in the same place. For me, I look at it to fill up all the green and then sometimes be in the yellow a little bit, never hitting the red ever, because if I decide to clip gain this to hell, it's going to hit the red. So my goal is keep it kind of in the green, a little bit of yellow is okay. And as I go through, I want it to sound natural, as if it is already being compressed and some makeup gain applied, but none of it's not being compressed. There's no makeup gain applied. So it's as if it was. You could do this so many ways. Like I said, another way is vocal rider. Some people like, I hate that thing, so I never use it. But some people like vocal rider. I like to do it by hand. Another option would be to automate the volume itself if you wanted to. Go to volume and then take this and put it on touch if you want, and then go through with a fader and manipulate it, or just draw it in with a mouse. And then when you're done with that, just commit it. File, track, and then commit, and then make sure, here's a big one, you got to make sure you got volume and mute for render automation checked. Because if you don't have this checked, it won't do your volume moves. It won't commit that. But this is a good way to get offline bounce, which is a quick way. If you don't want to do that, or you don't use Pro Tools, and maybe you don't have something that allows you to do that, I don't know, just another way, because there's 100 ways to do all this stuff, like always, you could just arm a track below it, send this into that track, and record the track below it. So, just like you would print your mix, you're just going to print any automation moves onto another track. That's another way to do it. I mean, like I said, and the third option would be like automate the level of the input on a compressor, which I hate and I never do. Because when you wind up doing too many things that you never do, then when you try to fix a problem, you got to first remember what you did in order to fix it. And the more stuff you do, the more you'll get into trouble with stuff like that, where you have to remember what you've changed, and then it's always a different place you have to go to deal with something. So that's why I will often it's a reason why I don't usually use volume trim. I'll use volume, just volume, because as soon as you start using volume trim and volume, now you get multiple lines over here that start making it look more crazy, and you could be bumped up to like 12, but it says +2 because it's adding and subtracting the volume trim and the volume. It just gets to be a disaster. So I leave it volume, because it's easiest when I'm automating volume. I never use volume trim. So it's just, you could work 100 ways and deal with what you want to do. But in my opinion, if you ever been in that situation where it says like +2, but you're maxed out and you can't move the volume anymore, but you also notice there's a few different lines here, it's probably because you have volume trim automated in some way. So just go to the volume trim thing, clear that all out, and then it'll get back to normal. So I just find you get into trouble with stuff like that more often than you really need to. So I keep things as simple as and basic as I possibly can. So anyway, that's the idea here. And then once you've gone through, I just want you to see, it's like I have a passage like this, and we know before it looked like this, which is all over the place, right? Now it's going to look more consistent, and it can look as consistent as I want, but the ultimate test is when I play it back. When I play it back and I listen to it, that will determine how loud or how low everything should really be. Okay, so like when I look at this meter as I play it.
Path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men.
See, notice it's at the top right here. It's going to be at the top of the green, full green, with a little bit of going into the yellow. I'm good with that. That's how I know it's in the right place. All right, now when I open up a compressor, right here, watch this. Now I can set this input level here so that it only does like 3 dB of compression, roughly. Check it out.
Path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men.
So it's pretty close to about 3. But by doing what I'm doing, it allows this to work better. So some people think, oh, that's what a compressor is for. You don't need to do that. I don't agree. It makes a compressor sound worse when it is all over the place and you can never set it right, because compression adds a flavor and a sound. And when it's not touching it's not touching your signal at all because it's set where the threshold is never getting hit, then it's going to sound different than when it is. So by having the thing work consistent, you're keeping a more consistent sound, is how I visualize this. All right. And no right or wrong way. Use any compressor you want if you're trying to achieve something like this afterwards, but try this kind of thing first. And then what I find is I use less compression the more I do this kind of thing, because you don't need as much. The volume is actually way more transparent than the compression, but it still kind of gives you what you want. Now, the problem with something like this is if you got an hour passage or something, or 2 hours of a voiceover, doing this on every part is going to be a bit of a pain, but you do what you got to do. Some voiceover clients want no effects at all, no processing, no compression, no limiting, dry. So if you don't do this, it will be dynamically all over the place, and that might be fine for them because they got somebody they're going to pay to do it. But if they want you to do it, this is how I would do it. You go in and you basically just make it as level as you can by hand, and then it's just volume automation. And it's as easy as taking it off if you don't want to. But it really depends on how long of a recording you're doing, because this could get to be a bit of a pain on a big, long passage. It also depends on the vocalist. In other words, if they are very good at what they do, they might have a mic technique thing already down where they're controlling their own volume by being closer or further away from the mic. Sometimes it's not conducive to do that sort of thing. So it really depends on what they're doing, the material. It depends on the person, how they're doing, whether they have any vocal technique at all. So, the louder you get, the more you often have to back up from the mic. and it's relative. So if you get a little bit louder, maybe like an inch or less away. If you get super loud, maybe a few inches. It's you gotta really control how close or how, just to be able to control your own volume. Whereas a lot of people, they stay the same distance to keep a consistent sound. So you would want to, in that case, set your preamp low enough where you're not clipping, no matter how loud they get. So you tell them, get as loud as you're gonna get. Any singer, hey, how loud are you going to get in this song? Give it to me. And you'd be surprised. The first take they do will be, this is as loud as I'm going to get. And by the fifth take, sixth take, once they get into it, this is as loud as they go crazy. And it's just because that's what happens. The human body warms up. That's why, if you've ever done live sound, it's a joke when a band does their sound check before they've started. Everybody's nerves are in there and they're playing like little mice sometimes. And then, this is what would happen with my own band. We'd play so quiet on the sound check, and by song 3, we are loud because now all of a sudden the adrenaline's pumping and everybody's getting into it. And some people, do nudge up their amp or whatever. It's just, and the drummer's playing way louder. As soon as the drummer plays louder, now everybody else got to compete sound-wise to just get heard or hear themselves. So now everybody's getting louder. So there's a lot to this, but setting levels is important. And if you can, get the person to warm up a little first before, you really dial it in. You could have them do the loudest thing they're going to do and then watch what happens. Don't believe that that's the loudest thing they're going to do. Make sure they don't get significantly louder on the second take or third take. You see what I'm saying? You guys got this. So I'm going to leave it there. Any questions, any comments, throw it in there. Questions, comments, answers, all of it. I appreciate it. Hit the like button, subscribe. You guys got this. Evan Jaffe Custom Cut Studios. Take it easy.